Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Andy.
And Andy, I've got to ask you something that I think has come to the forefront of my mind, probably most moviegoers' minds. It's that it seems like there's been a real rise in movies of Satanist cults. And I got to know, have you had a lot of run ins in your life with Satanist cults?
Yeah, so little known fact, I actually often fight Satanist cults in my underwear in hotels like they do in this movie. So I'm very bitter towards this movie for just directly stealing stuff from my real life.
Well, your life, I understand why they do, though, Andy. I mean, like, your life just, it lends itself to, being filmed and being made into a movie. So,
Yeah, I lead a very interesting life. Yeah,
yeah.
apparently, like we were just talking before off camera, Satanist cults, a way bigger problem than we realized, I guess, because they're just all over the movies these days.
That's right. Apparently, Satanist cults are the new quicksand. Like the problem you
Yes,
you would think is going to be a big deal, but the way it's represented. Um,
yes, you would.
so the movie that we are talking about is "They Will Kill You," and "They Will Kill You." Um, I mean, I guess I'm going to have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't want to get into before we really jump into our main thoughts. So I guess I'll hold off, but I'll give the brief summary. And I'm going really vague because this is a movie that I think we'll have to get into a spoiler warning pretty early.
Yeah.
But here's my attempt at a summary. Asia, played by Zazie Beetz, shows up for her first night as a maid at a private building in NYC. But it turns out the building and its inhabitants aren't quite what they seem. But to their surprise, Asia isn't quite what she seems either. And now what was supposed to be a simple sacrifice turns into an all-out battle for survival. Andy,
Yeah.
was They Will Kill You good?
I don't know, Jeremy. I think They Will Kill You is kind of part of the reason why we have our mid of the year movies. Um, we talked, I think, last year when we did our mid, like, the pendulum swings sometimes. There's some good in this movie, there's some bad in this movie. And ultimately, I think at the end of the day, the pendulum just kind of stopped swinging right in the middle. I thought the good was good, but I thought the bad was bad. And maybe it's unfair to hold it against this movie, but it's terrible releasing, to have this come out right after Ready or Not 2. So even though it is a little different, it kind of isn't, so it just right off the bat feels like a little bit of a ripoff. So I just very much landed in the middle on this movie.
I think that's fair. I think the positive that I can say for this movie is I was never bored while watching it because
No.
it takes big swings. It is not afraid to get weird. And so, like, yeah, I was watching going, like, I have no idea what they're going to do because it's that kind of movie. But you're right. My first note was I can't overstate enough how bizarre it is for this to come out 1 week after Ready or Not 2. Because, yeah, they're not the same. Like, they're different enough, but they still scratch the same itch, basically. So
Yeah.
you watch it and just go like, why? Yeah, it's hard, like you said, for it not to feel like it's familiar territory, even though this is a pretty original story. It lined up right next to the one thing it could be compared to.
Yeah, it's an all-time baffling decision from both studios. That no one would back down or change or alter or fight, scratch, and claw to be first. Which, I mean, I know Ready or Not 2 was first, but only by a week. And we'll get to it eventually, but I think in the long run, it's hurt both movies because they just are on the same corner.
Yeah, I mean, like we said last week with Ready or Not 2 not having the box office that, it would want and that we would want it to have, we're like, it's hard to imagine it's going to have a good second weekend when a movie that's going to steal a lot of its demographic is going to come out. So,
Yeah,
people
it's
having
just
to go and
really weird.
decide. Yeah, it's not. I just feel like it's not fair to the audience to have to go to the theater that this past weekend and decide: do I want to see Ready or Not 2 or They Will Kill You? Which one?
Yep. I guess you could just be full nerdy like us and just see them both.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean that's actually the right decision, but we're just aware that most people are not doing that.
Aren't going to do
Uh,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, I mean, we could maybe just have this discussion right now. You know, if somebody asks you, "Hey, which one should I see?" What do you tell them?
Man, that's tough. My, I mean, I think Ready or Not 2 is a better movie. Um, but yeah, I think my choice is Ready or Not 2, but there is the problem is that you stumped me. Because I'm like, I don't know what I would recommend someone to see. You know, if I had to choose between one of those movies, and therein lies the problem. They're so similar. Um, Again, I'm going to go back to like see them both because like they both have some positive. I think Ready or Not 2 has more positives, but I don't know. There's the problem. I don't know which one to choose because they're so dang similar.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not a unique thing in movie history. That it's a very common thing for the like similar type movies to come out in the same year. They usually just don't come out 1 week apart. You know, you can have your John Wick and Equalizer in the same year, but they're not going to be in the theater the same weekend where people are having to decide.
Yep. Yeah, I remember back in my day, it was Dante's Peak and Volcano. Both came
Hmm.
out in the same year, but like Dante's Peak came out in like February of '97, and Volcano came out in like April of '97. So like at least it allowed enough time for one to be out of the theater before you got the other one. So yeah, this is just an all-time weird thing from Hollywood.
Yeah, and then sometimes you get the ones that are similar, uh, but totally different tones. You got your Armageddon and Deep Impact. You know, well, what do you
Yeah.
like? Do you want fun, big, dumb action, or do you want the more serious drama? But this one, like I said, it's like kind of same tone. Now, I will say, if somebody asks me, depending on the person, They Will Kill You is definitely weirder, which is funny to
Oh,
say
it's way
because
weirder.
it's not like Ready or Not 2 isn't weird, but They Will Kill You is like full blown weird. So uh,
So weird.
I would say probably most of the people I know I would recommend Ready or Not just for the sake of like the other one might be too weird for you. Now, if it's somebody who's into weird stuff, I'd be like, go see They Will Kill You. Because if you like just to be like, I can't believe they're going there, go give that one a shot.
Yep. Well said.
All right. I think we will go ahead and do our spoiler warning here as we get into more details about the movie because once again, this is basically an impossible one to talk about without spoiling something.
Yes.
All right. So the big spoiler right off the bat that I did not see coming was this being an Air Bud movie. You know, like I just didn't see, him
I
coming into the
you
Satanist cult.
I suspected that it was. I saw the clues that you didn't. I picked up on the subtle nuances in the trailer that nobody else saw coming. So I wasn't
Right.
surprised that Airbud showed up.
Oh man. Uh, but
We
seriously,
think we're funny. That's all that
we
matters.
it really doesn't matter if anybody else loves our constant references to Airbud, but
They will
it's
not
my
go away. Spoiler
no,
spoiler alert.
they won't. Um, so uh, the this movie's I do like the way that this movie's constructed because I mean we start with a little backstory but very little of Zazie Beetz with her sister running away, and they're at this like little convenience store trying to
Yep.
grab some stuff before they take off. Their dad comes in, and he's apparently really abusive, and she ends up shooting him and running away. And then we basically
Mhm.
just jump 10 years, and she's at this mansion. You're like, wow, they're really not giving you very much because they're going to piece together a little backstory as we go.
Yeah.
Um, she goes in this place, and it's classic like, hey, how many red flags can you have before you
That
like
I wanted to talk about this right out
panic?
of the gate. There's literally like a glowing red like Satan symbol at the top of this hotel. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, and she just kind of looks at it like, huh, that's interesting architecture.
Yeah, and then
Sure.
there's like I don't know, not drawings, but like they're etched into the build, like the concrete of the building, like these demons and all this stuff. Like quite a few red flags.
Yeah. When she enters the building, the door has like three gigantic metal bolt locks that come
Yeah.
across the door. Uh, yeah, and then so you're seeing all these things, and it's clear as soon as she comes in that this is like a bizarre place. Like the other staff is acting very like Manchurian candidate ish, and
Yes.
uh, just the guests are like overly friendly and weird. Um, and so you're just like, this is all weird. That brings us to our first twist of why it makes sense that she's not freaking out, because she was kind of intentionally going into this building. It turns out she's not even who they thought she was. She's posing as this other person that's supposed to be starting this maid job, and we find out that she's going in there. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit because we don't find this out until we get our first like kind of really entertaining action sequence. But in order to explain it, it's hard not to jump ahead. But she's after her sister. She had found out her sister was in this building somewhere. Her sister came for a job and hadn't been seen, and so she's like, I got to go retrieve my sister. So
Right.
she went in, loaded up with some weapons, and we get the great first scene of people creeping into her room at night, and she jumps up and runs and like just jumps in her closet, shuts the door, and it's kind of funny.
It's really
But
funny.
the guy, it took me a minute to recognize is like the guy looks kind of familiar in that scene, and I think he's from the Harry Potter series. He plays like one of the famous side characters in Harry Potter.
Yeah, and he was on
But I
the
was like,
Flash TV show.
okay, and I think he was in the first Planet of the Apes movie, the more recent
I think
ones.
you're right. Yeah.
He plays kind of the jerk who's working at the like monkey facility or ape facility, and that Caesar catches him and says no to, like that first great scene where Caesar rises up and says no. Anyways, that's not important to the story. But my point is just that he's a recognizable character, so I'm like, oh, he's going to be like one of the key characters of this movie. She opens that cabinet and slices his head off, and it falls off. And I was like, oh, snap! They just pulled they pulled a Scream. They killed the known actor right out of the gate. But then, of course, after this action sequence, which was a lot of fun, as she's just chopping people, and it is cartoonish. I mean, it is like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He gets his head cut off, and it's just like blood squirting up everywhere, from a clear like dummy body. In fact, he even makes a Monty Python reference shortly thereafter. He says it's but a scratch, which of course is from their famous Black Knight fight, but. But anyways, this great action sequence, and then we find out like they all heal like friggin' Wolverine. He picks up his head and he puts it back on, and that's the first twist where it's like, oh, this is like we're going real supernatural with this thing.
Yeah, and by the way, at this point, we're like 12 minutes into this movie, and all this stuff has already happened. Like, this movie does not mess around. So, up to this point, like, after this action sequence in her hotel room, I'm all in at this point because I'm like, oh, this was really entertaining. Now, I immediately clocked, like you're talking about the over-the-top cartoonish violence. In a lot of ways, it's a Kill Bill ripoff. Like even like the way the blood's spurting up after she cuts his head off, that's very Kill Bill-ish. This movie had a lot of Tarantino vibes.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? I was trying to place it, and I said it was kind of like Monty Python, but you're right. It's definitely more Kill Bill-ish, and I was like, I knew it looked familiar, and I didn't place it, so good eye.
Yeah. But that scene is a ton of fun. Like, she blasts one of those dudes with a shotgun, and he just goes flying like 20 feet backwards. Heather Graham is in this movie randomly, and like, she's got some cool fight stuff, and it's funny. Like, Zazie Beetz is like using her as a shield, and this guy like keeps hitting her with like a, I don't know, piece of wood or something, and she's just like, and she's screaming, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I love this. It's just ridiculous. It's not at all trying to be realistic, and I was in on all this stuff.
Yeah, I felt like they struck a very good balance. I'm just gonna say this right now. I enjoyed all the action scenes in this movie because they do strike a good balance between being ridiculous and funny and fun, but well choreographed.
Great.
We've talked about movies these days in a post John Wick world. You can't just like kind of halfway the action scenes. You can't just kind of like, some stuff happens. Like, you've got to like really show us something cool and well choreographed and put together. And these all were. So I appreciated that about the movie.
Me too. And Zazie Beetz is great in this movie. I'll go ahead and say that. Like, for what she needs to do, I think she does a great job. And they also just do a great thing in this movie, which kudos to them. When she wants to kill someone before she knows they're immortal, like when she stabs someone, she stabs them like 40 times. Like, she goes all out. And it's like, oh, cool, thank you. Like, she is just so no nonsense. She's not doing like the "Oh, I shot him like in the shoulder. They probably died." She's like, "I just stabbed them 150 times with a machete."
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, really, the only explanation they give, I kind of like this. Like, where did you learn to fight is a line in the movie. And she just says
Prison.
prison. And we get just a little glimpse of like her having to fight gangs of people off basically in prison. And it's,
Yeah.
you can kind of tell she is just a brawler. She's just like, I'm just, charge into it and just go all out. Like she definitely has skill and finesse to it, but it's not like somebody who was trained, specifically. It's just, like I said, she's just a brawler.
Yeah, and I really thought she did a great job in this movie.
I did too. I mean, it was literally, I was having the thought watching the movie. I was like, not long ago, after we watched Ballerina with Anna de Armas, and we talked about our female action movie, Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying that she earned her way onto that because one, this movie is just probably not good enough for that. And two, a lot of the ones that were on there had at least, more than one movie to kind of make their character iconic. We talked about Ripley and we talked about Sarah Connor. Um,
Yeah.
but we kind of had our time coming up with the others. Or not hard time, but we were like saying there's cases for so many others. And I would just say like she definitely made her way onto like the honorable mention of that
Oh,
list.
absolutely. I would love to see her do some more action movies after this.
Yeah. Um, and she's also someone I just think is a good actor. I think it always helps when it's their first good at acting and
Yes.
then they do the action stuff.
Yes.
Um,
Teach good actors action instead of teaching action stars how to act.
right. Um, which somebody may have the goal to say that about Keanu Reeves, and I'll say, how dare you? Keanu Reeves knows exactly what he's doing when he's acting, and he can deliver a line with the best of them.
Does.
So once she finds out that they're basically immortal and she can't kill them, it's kind of becomes like I can't really just fight my way out of here. Now it's I've got to escape. But we also find out she's got to find her sister first before she can escape. So she does eventually find her sister, and at first I was like, here's the thing that's right on par with Ready or Not. It's like both these movies, as if they weren't both like, hey, people being hunted in like a contained setting, they're both going to have sisters who are estranged and going to have a hard time getting along, although they have to get along to escape together.
I know,
thing.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Luckily, this one resolves pretty quickly. Like, it looks like they're going to go down that route for a while, and it resolves pretty quickly, and they're just on the same page, so that was nice.
Yeah. And it does lead to a really funny moment when the sister's like, "No, I'm not going with you." So Zazie Beetz just socks her right in the face and knocks her out. Like, that was really funny.
Yeah, exactly. Again, going back to Zazie Beetz is like, she's just a no nonsense. Like, we're not messing around. I'm doing what I got to
like,
do.
I don't have time
get
for
out
all
of
this
this
crap. Yeah, she's like, "You're coming with me."
Yep. This is a movie that I think we talk about it a lot. Give me either believable characters in an unbelievable setting, or you can give me unbelievable characters, but they have to be grounded in a believable setting. And this is, of course, a completely ridiculous setting. But I was pleased with, like, I felt like Zazie Beetz was really usually doing things that I was like, that makes sense. I'm glad she's doing that. She's not doing a lot of dumb things. She's doing, in these types of movies, the thing that always drives me the most nuts are when people refuse to, like, pick up the obvious weapon around them. And it's like, she doesn't do that. She's always grabbing the obvious weapon around her, and making sure she's as prepared as possible to keep fighting these people.
Yes, and to me, that just automatically makes movies like this like 30% better.
Yeah. So I know I'm going to be jumping around a bit, but I mean, a lot of this is just, it's basically, this movie's like an hour and a half long, and it's like one long, crazy, weird chase, with slight bits of backstory and then slight bits of character sprinkled throughout. Not a lot of it, but it's just basically one big chase action sequence through this building. So sorry, it's going to lead to some jumping around.
Yeah, and that's fine. And then, like, again, the Tarantino thing, like, you get like a title card, or not a title card, but like the sister's name, whatever her name is, will pop up on the screen, and then we jump back to her backstory for a minute. And I do think this movie does a good job of, like, this movie is sold on, like, the crazy over the top action and violence and stuff. So when we do get these backstories, it's just enough to kind of advance things, and then we're back to the insane action. So I'll just go ahead and say this: all my complaints about why this movie is only mid is because of how bad the last like 10 minutes is.
Hmm. All right. So before we get to that, I
Yeah,
do have to say this. I think the flaming axe scene might be a candidate for next year's scene of the year.
dude, that was
So
amazing.
yeah, I mean, just everything about the way it's staged. So I first off, let me just say this: this scene was everything that the movie Psycho Killer thought that its act scene was going to be when he goes into
Yes,
that Satanist cult's house. That was not what it thought it was going to be. This one was. So there is a room full of people, and they're all in their cloaks, which is a great just thing for villains when they're all just sort of anonymous, menacing-looking people in cloaks.
it works perfect.
Uh, she's got an axe, and um, and again, this is people just being smart. You know, like they're in a dark room. She was just struggling to fight him because she couldn't see him, and she realizes there's some spilt there's like a spilt tray of liquors next to her, and she takes off her little rag that she had wrapped in her hand. She pours the liquor on it, wraps around the axe blade, and lights it. So now it's like I've got a torch to see and an axe, and she
It's
makes her way through
incredible.
that room, and it's choreographed well, and it's beautifully shot with the light from that axe just like, and
Yeah.
the more people she hacks and it kind of ignites them and they're lighting up the room, and the more like illuminated it gets, and it's just so cool.
It is so cool. Yeah, it Psycho Killer was already just dreadful and awful anyway, and then this just shoveled more dirt on the grave. And I remember we complained like in that scene with that axe and Psycho Killer that was such bad like CGI blood and stuff. This honestly looked pretty good for a fairly small budgeted movie. And then it all culminates in her leaping at someone with this axe. What does she do? Like throws a table or something or a
Yeah, I think she
chair.
like, does she throw or kicks the table up so that because the person
Yeah,
has a gun, they're gonna shoot it, and
and she jumps like I swear she's sailing like 15 feet. It's not even trying to be grounded in reality. And then she just chops this person, in the top of their head and just splits them right in half. And then of course she gets to stand there with a flaming axe. So obviously she looks BA. You're right. It's an absolute contender for scene of the year. It's incredible.
yeah. Um, and it's not even much of an insult to say this because that scene was so good, but like the movie peaks there. Like
Oh,
the
sure it
movie's
does.
not going to top itself there. Um,
No.
and we eventually lead to them making it. They're trying to make it to the roof. I think is the only way that they think they can get out.
Like a
And they
fire
said you've got to
escape
go.
or something.
Yeah, they say you got to go through like the ninth floor, and somebody just makes a reference of like you don't want to go to the ninth floor, and so they make it to the ninth floor through the elevator shaft. And when they get there, all the bad guys are just there waiting for them. It's basically like they're stuck. They're between the elevator shaft and the people, and that's where they're given the reveal that hey, the sister, how do you think she's still alive and still with us? Is she agreed to be part of our cult, basically? And
Yeah.
she was supposed to have a sacrifice, and the lady whose place you took to get in here was going to be your sister's sacrifice. So if she doesn't have a sacrifice, she dies, basically. Uh,
Yeah.
it's convoluted a little bit, but it's a good way to twist like why it's to put our characters in that final bind, that how in the world are you going to get out of this type bind. um
Yeah. And I'm
and
along for the ride for all
yeah,
of that, right up until they take them to the basement, or maybe they're on that same floor, wherever they are. I don't know. And then you get this reveal that like Satan is there, and then he like enters a pig's head, which is on a stick. And then from that point on, I just thought it was a mess.
it's it's definitely this movie is, like I said, this movie is weird. And again, it's so funny to say after Ready or Not 2, I thought Ready or Not 2 took big swings and got weird with its ending. And
Yeah.
after watching this one, it's like, no, Ready or Not 2 was actually pretty tame and pretty normal with its ending
Yeah,
compared to this
it
one.
makes Ready or Not to look like it has subtlety and nuance to it. And here we have Patricia Arquette like putting this pig's head on her head, and it like forms with her body. And even that stuff was
And
fine because earlier in the movie, there's a scene where an eyeball, it just like
yeah,
rolls around to chase them, and Heather Graham's crawling around with no head, in these tunnels, and that stuff was actually funny. It was so over the top that you had no choice to laugh, I don't think. What really drove me nuts about this end is like, okay, so this is supposed to be Satan, like the devil. And Zazie Beetz outsmarts him like 4 different times, and none of them are like in really that clever of a way. And I know that probably sounds like the really stupid nitpick for everything that's going on in this movie, but it's just really, that stuff just did not work at all for me. Like, why didn't someone else just do this? If it's that easy to just set this pig on fire, and I don't know, it was just like, it just couldn't sustain this crazy momentum and wackiness that it had. It finally just like collapsed.
Yeah. I don't think I had as much of a problem with it as you did. I think because it had been so zany up to that point, it was like,
Mhm.
why not? Of course, we got a talking pig's head possessed by Satan that then
Right.
attaches. Now, it it's weird. It's crazy. Do I think they could have had a better ending? Probably. But again, going back to characters doing what you expect or what you would want, the pig makes a comment about like the names on the lit on they're like written on the pig's head, like those are the people who can't be killed. And so she just like, okay, so she takes the head and douses it in bleach and then sets it on fire. So it basically
It's
like
funny.
burns off all the names, and you're like, yeah, I guess that's what you would do. And
Pretty
so
good
all the
idea.
people are now mortal. Yeah.
And it gives you a really funny visual. Like she just pushes, like it's on a cart, this pig head that's on fire, and she just pushes the cart, and it just goes like flying down this hallway. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit too hard on it. I just was like, all right. And then, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a couple minutes, but then it's like she just changed her sister's name to her name. Like she just literally, and I'm just like, all right, like we're kind of just getting into this territory where everybody can just do whatever they want, and I don't know, it just didn't quite work for me. And again, it's a ridiculous nitpick in the movie where there's a talking pig's head possessed by Satan, but it just kind of didn't work.
No, no, I'm with you. Also, that's maybe the one moment where I was like, well, why didn't they just? Where I was like, why didn't she just also write her sister's name? Like there's no rule against having both names to be immortal. You didn't have to risk one
Yeah.
life in order to have the other one be safe. I don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah, so they make it out. The building basically goes up in flames because I don't remember reasons. I guess the pig's head
Reasons.
maybe sets
Yeah.
everything on fire as she pushes it through.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, the movie is like an hour and a half, and that's maybe one of the best choices that it makes. Is it just breezes through? I mean, yeah, it's 134 minutes, but that includes credits. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, this
And
movie knows what it knows what it is, and it gets to it right away.
yeah, and it's really smart. Like once they get out of that hotel, they get in a cab with like this, I guess he's supposed to be like a private detective she hired to find her sister. They have a little bit of
Yeah,
banter back and forth, and movie over. Like this movie knows to just like get in, get out, let's be done with it and move on.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it knew exactly what it was doing. Um, so just quickly, Rotten Tomatoes, 66% from the critics. I actually feel like that's higher than I would have guessed for
Yeah.
critics for a
Mm-hmm.
movie like this. Um, but I mean, just we've done the comparison so much. I wanted to compare it. Ready or Not 2 is 73% from the critics, so the critics are a little higher on Ready or Not. This one had 79% from audiences. Ready or Not 2 had 90% from audiences. So audiences also higher on Ready or Not than this one, which again doesn't surprise me because this one is plenty weird.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds about right.
So we talked obviously before about Ready or Not 2's box office and how this movie would affect Ready or Not 2's box office. Can you tell me anything about how this movie's done at the box office?
Yeah, it did really poor. It opened to $5 million US, $9 million worldwide. So just a very quiet box office. Now, like Ready or Not 2, this does have a small budget. What did you see? I saw 20 million.
Well, I saw 10 million for the budget.
Okay,
is what I
maybe
saw.
maybe that's more right. So
But that it might just mean like, well, I see something else that says 20 now, so who knows?
yeah. So I mean, either way, a pretty low budget movie that looks good. So that will help a little bit, but both of these movies, and then the second part of the story is that Ready or Not Two dropped like 55%, which is actually not horrible, but it just had such a soft opening. I think Ready or Not Two, like in the U.S., is at like $16 million, and it's just not going to get much. It's going to bottom out at like 20, $22 million probably. This probably won't even hit that. So even like, and I will say, like, even as we're talking through this movie, They Will Kill You. I kind of already want to change my thumbs in the middle to a slight thumbs up because we did say a lot of positive things about it. But both of these movies kind of lose in this scenario because neither one of them did well. Like, it's great that we liked them, but they just neither one made a big impact, which is really unfortunate because Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton are awesome in Ready or Not 2. I think Zazie Beetz is awesome in this movie. And now you have to wonder how quickly they'll be offered, some roles like this in the future with both of these movies doing poorly. So it's a real bummer.
Yeah, it is. But you could probably speak to this. I think the other thing that these had going against them, besides just being too much like each other, is being also both up against a juggernaut like Project Hail Mary.
So you're exactly right. And that's really the big story. Project Hail Mary only dropped like 30% in box office. So it is, I think it set a record for like smallest second weekend drop for a non sequel or non, like IP, like superhero franchise or something. It had a phenomenal hold from last weekend. So that's also part of the problem is they're just in the orbit of the Project Hail Mary, phenomenon that's going on right now. So it's that's the sad thing. Like when you love movies like we do and we want movies to succeed, sometimes they don't, even if you feel like they should. And both of these movies are taking a loss. They really are.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but what we'll say is if you like weird, unique action, horror, comedy, there two movies have come out that would be right up your wheelhouse in the past 2 weeks. So, give
Absolutely.
those
And
a shot.
honestly, and again, I know we make fun of this and we say like there's no real way to gauge success on streaming, and I believe that, but I could see both of these movies kind of finding a little bit better of an audience once they are available to stream. I really could because of how, especially like with They Will Kill You, because of just how weird and off the rails it is. Like I could see it finding a little bit of an audience once it hits a streaming platform, and I hope it does.
Yeah, and I mean that would be yeah, that's what happened with the first Ready or Not, if I'm not mistaken. Like it was not a huge theatrical success,
Yeah.
but it just really gained a following after when it was released on streaming and video.
Yeah, so I mean, I hope if there is a silver lining here, it's maybe that both of these movies I do think have the potential to find that kind of success. So
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I guess only time will tell with that
yeah,
one. Um, Andy, it was a lot of fun. I am curious to see. Is it going to be, how long will it be before we get our next Satanist cult movie? I don't know. Is the theme going to continue as the year goes on?
we'll see. I wonder if they squeeze Satanist cults into the Super Mario movie that's coming out next weekend.
Oh, I mean, it would fit right in. So,
Yeah, it sure would.
yeah. I will be curious to see. Yeah, I mean, like this first Mario movie was a really big success at the box office, right? So I'll
Oh
be
yeah,
curious to
it made
see
over $1 billion. Like it was a huge deal.
yeah, I imagine the sequel will do very well. And so once again, it's just smaller movies might have a hard time in the coming weeks as they contend with the Mario movie and Project Runways hasn't slowed down yet. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, well, we will be back soon. We're gonna have a second episode this week. We love it when we have 2-episode weeks. We've got a movie that is a what did we watch it on Netflix? Is it a Netflix streaming movie?
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Sorry, Prime. It's a Prime streaming movie called Pretty Lethal, and we will be back for you guys in a couple days, for us just in a few minutes to talk about that.
Can't wait.
And so we will see you guys next time.
See you next time.